There we go. I had a question on my YouTube channel, and I figured we'd go ahead and talk about it now. So it started out, well, so you can capture height maps and normal maps in ZBrush, and usually when I'm using ZBrush, I'm going to use height maps because I can just use that to displace my geometry, or vector displacement maps now. So if we do that, for capturing normal maps, it's going to be a texture grab over here, or an mRGB grab. So for example, let's go ahead and, hey everybody, thanks for showing up. For example, if I go over here and just grab any mesh over here and I drag it out of my canvas and go into edit mode, if I go take that out of edit mode and then I go into here, into the just like the tool palette, and then grab like the mRGB Z grabber, that's going to grab Z, which is height, and then mRGB, which is the texture. So when I do this, it'll go ahead and grab the height and the alpha, and then the texture over here. Now the height, if I, let's see, Control N, let's grab this star right here. If I go and make this 3/4 here, and then use mRGBZ, if you hold down Shift, that'll snap it to a square, and you can use spacebar to kind of move that around. Maybe, let's see. There we go. Now you can see we're getting that gradient of high to low on there. So once you have that height information, you can go ahead and turn that texture information off. Now we can go over here to like a polyplane, make polymesh 3D, and actually let's make sure everything's working. Okay, everything's plugged in, good. So now we have that. If I divide this up and then go into draw mode, and we got the standard brush, let's make this a drag rect, and we'll grab that depth grab. And now we can kind of drag out that 3/4 view. Now, of course, this is an alpha, so it's going to go straight out. You know, there's no undercuts there. If we did want to make an undercut, we'd have to use a vector displacement map and project that from the polyplane. Another way you can do that now, if you wanted to do like a multi-displacement, would be if we take, well, we already have that kind of built in, so go into edit mode here, the plane 3D, make the polymesh, divide this up, and then go to brush BC. There's chisel rect. And you're going to see there's a bunch of objects in here. So as you select these objects, you'll be able to use those as alphas. So now you can have multiple alphas assigned per a brush and have it drag out. And of course, you can control the intensity just by lowering or raising the Z intensity here. Now, as far as a normal map and capturing a normal map and using that in other programs in ZBrush, there's a couple different ways to do that. You can actually, you can use it on this, but it's more of a rendering thing because the normal map's going to be, it's going to look something like this. So if I hit W and then I just tap up here, let me see if I can go to delete lower. There we go. So if I hit W, I can just kind of cycle through these things here. And then if I say I wanted to capture this as a normal map here, I can go and make this a normal map color. And then I can go up here to render. I'm going to drag this render over here. Hey everybody, thanks for showing up. So I'm going to go to render, hit best render, and that's going to give me a normal map render. Probably there's a couple things you want to do before you do this though. So I'm going to go out of edit mode, hit Control N to clear my canvas here, and I'm actually going to go out of best render. We'll go back to preview just real quick. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to document over here, turn off Pro, and I'm going to go to 512 by 512, hit resize. Now you can do this any size. You can go over here to, if you do like 2048 by 2048 and then hit resize, it's going to give you a really big document. If you want to see all of that, you're going to want to zoom out, and where you're going to find that is under the document tab now in ZBrush 4R8. You're going to see a zoom. Just zoom this out, and it's kind of hard to see because I've changed the background color. So let's go ahead and go to the document back, and I'm just going to drag over here and pick that black. So there's our actual document. It's 2048. Just for demonstration purposes, I don't need anything that big, but you can certainly render out a 2048 normal map. It'll just take you a little bit longer. And by a little bit longer, I mean a couple seconds. It's not a big deal. But we'll go ahead and do 512 by 512. Hit resize. And there we go. So again, like I was talking about, if you just drag out any tool that you're working on and you have the normal map material applied to it, and then if you hit F to frame, and you can also hit D to activate dynamic subdiv right here. Let's go ahead, and you can see a little bit of faceting there. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to change the smooth, so divide to 3. So now if I hit F to frame, and then I can use my navigation to kind of back that off a little bit, or you can go out here and you can kind of click and drag that zoom there. Now if we do a best render, it'll go through and render this out, and then you can go texture, grab doc, and then you'll be able to export this as a texture. So go file or texture export, or select it and hit export here, and that'll export this as a normal map. If you want to swap this out with something else, just hit W, and then you can just click on something else. And because you have best render already turned on, it'll go ahead and best render as you cycle through. And then of course hit F to frame, and then let's hit Q. There we go. So F to frame, and then back off of that, and then go back to best render, and then I'll render out your normal map, and then you can just export that as a texture. Hey everybody, thanks for showing up. Now, this would be if you wanted to export anything in ZBrush as a normal map. Again, if you want to do a height map, we'll go ahead and just turn texture off, and we'll do alpha, grab doc, and now you've got your height map that you can export out externally. But of course, if you want to make a multi-alpha brush, it's just a simple matter of having the brush selected. And let's do Shift D, and let's go back to just a regular matte cap gray here, and we'll make a modification of this. So we'll go into ZModeler here, and I'll go to Insert. Let's just do Polygroup, Polyloop, and now I can go to QMesh, Polygroup All, and I'll just pull this in right there. So now we've got a little different look. We can hit D to bring our dynamic subdivs back, hit F to frame, kind of back that off a little bit. And then if we go back to our one here, actually we don't even need to do all this because we're not grabbing the texture. What we're going to do is hit B, go to Chisel Rect, and then we can just do Brush, which is already over here, From Mesh. So when I do From Mesh, it's going to throw this at the very end here. And now, if we go out of edit mode, hit Control N, let's go ahead and go back to our document here. If I want my document to fill up the entire workable size here, I'm just going to click on W size, new document. No, I don't want to save changes. And then we'll go ahead and drag out our polymesh plane here. Make polymesh 3D, divide this up. And now we can go ahead and change this to a drag rect. And then the alpha will just be loaded in as we select these. And now we can just go ahead and drag those out. So multi-alpha brushes are up here. If you want to do that within ZBrush, externally from ZBrush, you could render out your height or your normal map and then export that. So, got a question from Blands. If I low poly model a character with ZModeler, do I still need to retopologize? If I low poly model a character with ZModeler, I still need to retopologize. The retopologize is the same as patch modeling from way back when. No. You can patch model. I mean, if you're just using ZModeler, for example, let's see. We've got a cube here. Make polymesh 3D, and we'll go into polyframe mode and initialize QCube. Go into X mode here. So we're ZModeling here, and if this is all that you want to export, or this is just your model right here, you're right, you wouldn't need to retopologize this because it's already pretty low. However, this isn't perfectly optimized. If you wanted to optimize this for a game engine, you can go in here and then you would go like Insert, Single Edge Loop, and hold down Alt and get rid of anything that doesn't change those are extra triangles that aren't affecting the surface. In fact, you can even go in here and go in a collapse edge, and you can get rid of this one here because, again, these things aren't affecting how the silhouette is changing. So those are just wasted triangles. So it's just a matter of going in and really optimizing your geometry. That's all retopology is taking something that's 10 million polygons, like, oh, for instance, let's go to initialize here. We've got our character going. Let's see where we left off with her. Let's see, streaming, ZBrush female, high res. For example, If you're just modeling low poly, it's not a big deal because you'll just have a low poly model. But if you're modeling something like this, that is 12 million polygons and counting right now. So we've got our character here, and we've got, for instance, let's see, preferences, edit, line cursor surface. We'll just take a little piece. We'll take this piece here. If we go to solo mode and hit frame, F to frame here, you're going to see we've got this piece here, and it's got all this detail on it, and even this thing is like a separate piece that you can like go out. If you're not going to animate this, this doesn't need to be a separate piece of geo because it doesn't really break the silhouette. Like if you're in a game and you're only going to see that piece from this far, there's no point in like making this little latch a little separate piece and doing all that, or building out geometry around these little details right here. So what you're going to do is just to make a super low poly cage, so maybe 60 polygons if you really want to get all the changes in angle here for your silhouette. However, even if I have this all as one character and this is just going to kind of go with her torso here, you can just retopologize right across this. You can get really low, you can make her whole torso 1,000 polygons if you want to, and then you would bake all this detail to a normal map or a displacement map, but probably a normal map if you're doing it for video game stuff. But yeah, if you're just modeling super low poly stuff, then it's just a way to optimize your actual geo that you put in the game. So when it animates and is bound to a rig, it is super low, and then you just use normal maps to derive the extra 12 million polygons, the look of the extra 12 million polygons. Question from Anthony. I just forget how to. I want to make an object, say a cube, and change its shape using subdivision option. And then change its shape using subdivisions. That would just be, okay, so we'll take a cube here, if I understand this correctly. And I usually start with anything. You can start with a cube here, but when I'm just doing box modeling stuff, if you make a Polymesh 3D, you'll have this. You can also, before you make Polymesh 3D, if we just go back to Cube 3D, go to Initialize, you can go in here and you can do X size and V size and twist and H divides and V divides and stuff. But what I'll usually do is go down here to make it a Polymesh 3D and then hit Cube. That'll just give me a simple cube. If you want to drop this res down to 1 even and hit Cube, you'll have that. I also like the work in ZBrush's native size, so I'll go to Deformations Unify. Then I'll hit X to go across X symmetry, then I'll do a quick mirror and weld, which is geometry mirror and weld. If you want to, so the question was, and change its shape using a subdivision option. So the subdivision option is right here. This is where you add actual subdivision. So if I hit divide right now, it's going to just divide and add more geo. Depending on how you're modeling here. So now that I have more geo, I can go in here and like move more points around. I can hit Control D or just keep hitting divide to get more and more geometry. And then I can start just subdividing this thing up and sculpting more with my clay brush or my move brush or whatever. So that's how you would add subdivisions. However, if you're just box modeling like this, and then we go in here, we hover over we go to our ZModeler brush, so BZM, hover over an edge, insert. Let's do multiple edge loops here. And then we can go in here to like our QMesh brush polygroup all. We just like QMesh these in or out. So now we have this type of shape here. If you want to add subdivisions without having to add actual divisions, what you'll want to do is go over here to our dynamic subdiv menu underneath the geometry tab and then hit dynamic. This is going to give you a smooth subdivision preview. So if you hit Shift D, that'll take you out of that. And then we'll go over here. We'll go to, insert multiple edge loops here. And then we'll insert multiple edge loops here. And then I'm going to go over here to polygroup. We'll do flat island. And then we'll do checker. And then we'll go ahead and do that. And then we'll tap Alt as we do it. There we go. So now I can go through here and we can QMesh polygroup all. Let's tap off X symmetry. And now we can do and more of this type of modeling. So we can go to like inset polygroup all. And then we can go to QMesh polygroup all and pull these back. So when I hit D, that's going to give me a smooth preview. And now it looks like we have kind of a smooth mesh with little holes in it. If I want to have a different type of look. Let's pull these out. You can go in here to dynamic, and then instead of smooth subdiv, we'll do Q grid. So we'll crank that up, and then we'll change our coverage, and that'll give us a preview of what it would look like if we subdivided with, if we go ahead and hit apply, you're going to see where it's actually giving me subdivisions or where it's giving me geometry here to get the look, that kind of beveled look on all of our hard edge surfaces. However, I usually try and stay away from, like, if we wanted to, let's do a smooth subdiv here. So the cool thing about having this on is if we have dynamic here, we can go over here and just like crease by normal angle here, or we can do increase all. The thing is, we have dynamic, it's previewing that, and if we go Shift D, or we can just have D turned on, we can go ahead and mark these ones and just continue to Z model as needed. Let's go ahead and turn on X symmetry here. So now we can continue to Z model. It looks like it's being subdivided. In fact, if we want to, we can go in here and we can like hover over this edge, and we'll do like crease, edge loop complete. So now we can like start putting creasing in here. You can crease, and if you're having a hard time getting those edges, just hit Shift D to hop out of that mode. So now we can kind of start adding creases in here. If these creases are too sharp, or you want a preview of what it would look like if you, there we go. If you wanted a preview of what it would look like if you subdivided this, say, 4 times, and then under your crease menu, change your crease level to like 3, that'll make it, that'll just kind of put a little soft transition on that bevel there, because it's creasing, it's subdividing 3 times with the crease on, and then it turns it off and subdivides it 1 more time. So if you want to do a little bit less, you can crease level of 2, and there you go. But it's still non-destructive, it's still totally editable. I can still go in here and just keep Q meshing, or however you want to model this thing, and going over here and then creasing, creasing these edges. So this would probably be my preferred workflow as I'm working, just to kind of get a preview, because then I can use this as a, because as soon as you add subdivision history, it's going to give you, it's going to limit you on some of the operations that you can do in ZBrush. So there's that, and then there's Q grid and all that good stuff. So if you're just looking to see what it would look like subdivided, I would say don't subdivide until you get it how you're, this amazing thing we just made. Once you're ready to have actual subdivision history, now you can just hit apply, and now you've got real subdivision history. Then you can step down and step forward and model however you want. But until you get to that point, I would say just use dynamic subdivs instead of real subdivision history. Okay, so like reducing its divisions. Yeah, so if you did start out with your cube 3D, this is where you would go if you wanted to reduce subdivisions before you started working. That's where you go in here and do like an H divide and a V divide of like 8, and that'll give you a pretty simple cube. But for the simplest cube, I'll just make it a polymesh 3D. Because, you know, when you drag out a primitive, it's just going to be a poly primitive. It's a Q cube. As soon as you hit make polymesh 3D, it changes the name to PM3D, polymesh 3D. And now you have this initialize option, then you can hit Q cube. If you want to get another option, let's go to geometry. I think you can just go over here to, so Zremesh will give you new geometry as well. So you can go in here to Zremesh, and then you can do like same, adaptive size down to 0, hit Zremesh, and it'll go ahead and give you new geometry. If you want to maintain consistency on those edges, it might be better to go over here to poly groups. Let's just do auto groups. No, group by normals. That'll give you a poly group on each side. And now in Zremesh, you can go keep groups, change smooth groups down to 0, same, adaptive size down to 0. And now you've got a Q cube that's simplified. Now, is that any better or worse than going down here to initialize Q cube and saying the XRes is like 3 and then hitting Q cube? No, but just another option for you if you have a slightly more complex shape, let's say. Hey everybody, thanks for showing up. Have I made a fantasy armor tutorial? Yes, let me start spamming you guys with links. So specifically fantasy armor, yeah, we did the detail stuff on this stream. Let me bring that up for you, Pavlovich workshop. So when I stream for Pixelogic, you can go to this playlist here. It's on Pixelogic's website, or Pixelogic's YouTube channel. and you can watch that. I've got 20 episodes in, and if you scroll down to episode number 16, you'll see a guy wearing like a lion helmet, which is, let me see if I can find that for you guys here, if I remember streaming. Oh boy. This is a really old helmet, and I don't want to bore you guys going through some weird files. If it's not in here, I'm going to skip it. But it's a lion helmet. You know what? I guess I can just click on this. Let's watch a YouTube video while I stream YouTube. This thing. So you can go here, and you can just watch that lion helmet video there. And that's more how to detail, apply details to fantasy armor. If you want to say build fantasy armor, if you go to this channel here, I've got a bunch of different ways to build armor. Mostly I do sci-fi stuff, but I mean fantasy armor is pretty simple. If you guys want to do some fantasy armor, we can do that real quick. Way to do some retopology by hand instead of doing Zremesher? Yes. You can use Topology Brush and you can use ZSpheres. If we have our character here, hit F and go into solo mode. And there's actually quite a few ways to do this, but you could go in here to BTO, Topology Brush, and then you can just start, if it's multiple subdivision levels, I was going to do delete lower, and then you can just go through here and start making topology. So as you drag over this thing, it's just creating more and more new topology here. So you can kind of just go through here and just make topology. You can hold down Alt and drag to clean this up. And then if you make your brush size 1 and then tap on your object, and we'll go ahead and do, it's going to be subtool, split, unmask points here. It's summertime in Texas, and we have a fly in the house and bugging the crap out of me. If we go to solo here, I did summertime in Texas, which means there's bugs everywhere, and we have a doggy door, and she always goes in and out of the doggy door, so she's letting in flies, and it's bugging me. Anyways, so here's this topology here, and then you can use this to bake later on if you want to UV it and bake it out. You could use, speaking of dogs, there she is. If you want to have I like to use this method a little bit more. I'm going to hold down Shift, bent up arrow, and I'm going to go to Insert. There we go, Insert a Z-sphere. If I just want to see these, I can hold down Shift and then turn everything off. If you hold down Shift and turn the eyeball on, all your subtools turn on. If you hold down Shift and the eyeball off, it'll just have this one selected, so I'll tap the nameplate, and then the Z-sphere, go out of solo mode. So now I just have a Z-sphere and this object here. I'm going to tap the Z-sphere here, go into X for X symmetry, E to scale it down, and then W, and you can leave it down there if you want to. It's not a big deal, but we'll go ahead and move this up, go into transparency mode, and if you're so inclined, you can scale this down so it's just kind of sitting inside your object there. So now that it's out of the way, what we can do is I'm going to change it to matte cap pearl, maybe a dark gray, and I'm going to go down here to these, not rigging, not Z-sketch. I don't use these menus that often. I have my custom menu here, so that's when I do all this stuff. But I can go in here to, for example, adaptive skin, change the density down to 1, and then go to topology, edit topology, go into draw mode by hitting Q, and then you can just start retopologizing this thing here. So you can start drawing geometry as you go. I'm going to click down here and then go up here this way and just kind of start seeing where those surface changes happen. And if you're just going to bake this detail in there, you can just go ahead and just bake that on there and then just start dragging geometry out here. And then we'll connect the dots like so. And then now we're retopologizing. If you want to move things, just hit W, and then you can just kind of move these dots around. So that's another way to retopologize. And then once you're done with this, and we hit A, that's going to be our adaptive skin. Now, by default in R8, it's going to be like, whoa, what happened? That's because it's a single-sided mesh, and if we go to adaptive skin here, you can see it's a DynaMesh resolution. So if you hit A to go out of there and you do a skin thickness, and then you hit A, you're going to see we're starting to get more skin thickness, and it's a DynaMesh. If you want to raise that resolution, you can go out of A, raise that up, and then just start dialing that in. So here's a little bit more resolution. If you don't want that, change your DynaMesh resolution down to 0, and now you're going to get your retopologized geometry. In this case, you're probably not going to want to have skin thickness, so put that back down to 0. Hit A, go into solo mode, and now you've got topology here. You can just hit Make Adaptive Skin, and that'll shoot that topology out here in your tool palette. In this case, you can probably just go to Insert, grab your skin. You don't need the Z-sphere anymore. Just go ahead and delete it. And now you've got new topology here along with your original object. It's another way to retopologize in ZBrush without using Zremesh. You can also use Zremesh if you want to. And doing retopology by hand just gives you more control. Like, you know, Zremesh wouldn't put those points exactly where I put them. If for some reason I wanted these things exactly put right there, exactly where I want them, then I would just manually retopologize. If I miss your question in here, I apologize in advance. I'm just kind of doing a quick glance through, so just keep hollering at me if we... it's possible to work with smoothing groups and export it as an FBX where I can open it in Max. Smoothing groups, as far as like normal angle, you can probably do all soft. Where's that at? Z plugin. FBX exporter. So when you go into the FBX exporter, you can do soft normals. So you can export with smooth normals or hard normals, but it won't set the normal angle. You can export with an FBX creasing. So when we were talking about this thing here, so all this creasing we put on there, that'll export. So anything you have creased will export here. If we drag our undo slider back or just hit Control Z, we can go back to where we had dynamic on. So now if I do Shift D, let's change the white here, and then we go here. If I exported this using FBX, it would include this creasing. So the normal angle, it looks like it's either going to be all soft or all smooth or all hard. But as far as creasing, it'll export the creasing, which is useful. And oh yeah, you can combine Zremesh and retopology. In fact, if you want to see me doing that specifically, if you go down here to, you know what, I'll send you the full episode. Go to the full episode here and scroll all the way down to the bottom. Actually, you know what, let's do ZBrushes because we did that on ZBrush too. Pavlovich Workshop broadcast number 2. This one here. If this shoots you to a timestamp, I apologize. It's basically this one. We start out with a Zremesh, and then we take that into, and I talk a lot about Zremesh, and then I take that into our ZSpheres and clean it up. So you can start with Zremesh, and then you can go in and clean it up using ZSpheres. So check that video out. Again, if for anybody watching later, it's Pixelogy YouTube channel, Pavlovich Workshop, and then it's episode number 2. We go through all that. How can I turn off the icons XYZ on Transpose Master? XYZ on Transpose Master. That one I don't know. I'm not sure what turning off XYZ in Transpose Master is. Like on the gizmo or the floor. I guess I don't use Transpose Master that often, but actually when we pose her out, we'll be using it. So when we go to finally... let's go ahead and delete that and turn everything else back on. There we go. When we go to pose her out, I'm going to use Transpose Master, and then we'll pose her out and start rendering and all that good stuff. Cool. Oh, and if you want to know, I mean, so Pixelogic's, if you go to pixelogic.com, there's a tutorial section in there, and they'll walk you through the basics of ZBrush. And I also have on my channel, let me go back to my channel here. Live stream. Back it out. There we go. Sorry. If you go to this channel here, there's the ZBrush 4.8, what's new. So that'll take you through all the new features. And then if you go to Intro to ZBrush Part 1, that'll take you just through a quick walkthrough. That's not quick, it's 4 hours long, but there's some extraneous stuff in there, like exercises and stuff you can do that take up time. So it's probably like a 3-hour walkthrough just to kind of get you up and running in ZBrush, just with the basics. what's the best setup in Substance Painter to get all the painted content to ZBrush? The best way, best is kind of subjective. I would say you would retopologize and bake out your maps. If you wanted just a quick way to do it, and that's how I usually end up doing stuff in my live stream highlights here. If you go to my live stream highlights and you scroll down, you're going to see we go from ZBrush. So we take, I guess I can go ahead and load those up too. Let's look at what we did. So I'm going to load this up, and it was we'd made these robots in ZBrush here. This is not streaming, this is characters, and it was bots, and we'll do Ernie. We'll do Ernie high res, and here's the bake file. So if we load up Ernie's bake file here, we basically start out with this character in ZBrush. I go over here to Subtool and turn on the Poly Paint. Oh, you know what? This one isn't the actual bake file. Let's try Salt. There we go. So we have our little robot here, and I turn this off. Now this one doesn't have separate pieces in here, but this is before I would go ahead and divide them out. So what I basically do is go through and rename all of these separate pieces. If I want to bake them separately, I can rename them separately. So renaming is just going down here to rename, and then just typing in whatever. Now if I'm going to do a high to a low bake with different naming conventions, I can do whatever underscore high, export all of these out as an FBX, because it'll do FBX visible, export all my visible subtools with the poly paint on there as material IDs, and then decimate them down, auto UV them, export those out, throw those all into Painter, have Painter bake it for me, and then we just go through and texture them. If I go over here, so here's the live stream highlights. If you scroll all the way down, oh boy, there's a bunch. So here's where we get into, like, you know, rendering in Keyshot, doing the high-res material ID and export, the low-res export, texturing in Painter, rendering it in Array in Painter. All that stuff is all in there. And it all stems from starting in ZBrush, doing your high-res, exporting it all out, and then baking it. Now, that's not the best way to do it. That's the fastest way. That's not the fastest way. There's faster ways to do it. But just previs, which is all I'm usually worried about. I don't do a ton of production work anymore where I go in and manually retopologize this and optimize it and then bake these beautiful maps and do creasing groups and stuff like that. I'm usually further up the gradient where I just do a little bit more instant previs, get it in engine, make sure it's running, make sure it looks okay. That's where I spend most of my time. And then once it's all approved, then we go through and do the final game res, and since Painter's already done, we just pass it through Painter. It'll go ahead and apply all the work that we've already done, and then we just export a new map with better UVs, basically. But so yeah, if you go to the live stream highlights, there's that. There's also, if you go to my channel, there's the Reptile Creature series, and if you go down to video number 125, multi-baking in Painter from ZBrush, it's basically just the same thing, taking a reptile from ZBrush, exporting it out, and then taking it in there. So you can go ahead and I'll link you guys to that as well if you want. Whoops. That's video 125 in that list. Is there a way to patch model in ZBrush? Patch modeling is usually like NURBS based, and I don't think ZBrush has any. It has curves, but it doesn't have any sense of like NURBS modeling or anything like that. So I would have to say no, probably. But you can convert a poly model into NURBS. Not in ZBrush, but you could just poly model. You could do retopologize in ZBrush, and as long as it's simple. I don't really remember the rules of patch modeling. I haven't done that since like sophomore year of college, but if that's your workflow, then yeah, you could start out with polygons and convert that to subdivs, or you can convert that to subdivision topology, geometry, or NURBS, depending on the program you're working in. I know Maya will do it. So you could even start in ZBrush and then convert it. Could you demo subdivision tool, array, copy, duplicate, 360 direction? Yeah, I would use ArrayMesh for that. So if we let's take this seat here. Is that, yeah, okay. So we'll go into solo mode here, and I'm going to clone this off, and I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this robot since we don't need all this. So I'm going to go delete all, and I'll go here, and I'll go delete all, and then we got that. So here's our object here. I'm going to go out of X mode, And I'm just going to go ahead and delete hidden. And I'm going to hit W, and I'm going to tap this house, and that's going to throw it, let me see, here. That's going to throw it at world center, and then I'm going to do this to kind of reset it. And then we can go ahead and hold down shift, and this will be our kind of ArrayMesh object, let's say. So for ArrayMesh, what we would do is we could turn on ArrayMesh, and by default, it looks like transpose is already on. I'm not sure if that's always on, but we can do a repeat, so you can do multiple repeats, and it looks like it's already got an ArrayMesh on there. Interesting. Let's go ahead and delete that. There we go. So turn on ArrayMesh, turn off perspective here. So now we've got a repeat of 2, so if I do a repeat of like 5, you're not going to see anything happen because we need an offset. So we can go in here to offset here and do like an offset X or an offset X negative or an offset Y or an offset Z amount, and you can do X, Y, and Z, or you can do transpose and hit W, hit Y to go to transpose mode, and now you can use your transpose line here to kind of dictate where your offsets are happening, and your repeats here. You can just click and drag your repeats and kind of change that. So if you wanted to do another stage where you have this repeat and then it repeats more and like a rotation, we could just do append new, and now we can go over here to rotate. We can do Y amount. Let's do a rotate of Z amount. We'll do 360. And now we can do a repeat of like 5. And then if you want to change that pivot, you can go to here and pivot and just dial that in, or you can just go back to your transpose line, and since you have transpose turned on, you can grab this little yellow ring here and you can just set that pivot wherever you want. So if you set that pivot here, now we've got 2 stages, and we can always go back here and go, okay, you know what, I want to make changes to this thing. So I'm going to go in here with my ZModeler brush, hold down Alt, and we'll just tap these. Actually, let's hit, we do have X symmetry on here. No, I'm probably going to ruin this thing. I could sit there and fiddle with it, do a correct mirror and weld. We'll just do that real quick. So we'll go ahead and just start modeling these things out. And you're going to see as I'm changing this one, it's going through all of my transform stages and modifying them. So we go here, we'll drag these out, and then we'll go here and we'll just go ahead and do like a quick split point here, and then we'll go down to the bottom, we'll tap that, and then we'll just do a quick Q mesh, polygroup all, and just shove that through here. There we go. So now as we do this, just updating all of our instances here, so we can hit D and to turn on dynamic if we want to, or shift D to turn that off. You can go through here to any of these stages. If you want a repeat of like 12, you can just make that 12 instead of 5, and then W, and then again set your pivot point wherever you want, and start doing arrays or all the cool stuff you want to do. So there's subdivision, array, and now if you want to, you can also turn this into other things here. So if you want to turn this into actual geometry, you can hit, let's see if we can just do this. We'll go to geometry. If you do convert to BPR to Geo, it'll just make that actual geometry. However, you can also do this convert to NanoMesh. And what that's going to do is create cards for all these pieces here. So now if we go to NanoMesh, you can do, you can use all your NanoMesh properties here, so you can change the width of all of these. And again, these are NanoMesh is just instances. If we turn off show placement, we'll get rid of the cards, and now we can do like change the height and length and width of all of them. And you can also, if you turn on show placement, you'll see the cards. You can just go in here with the move brush, and as you move these individual cards around, that's going to give you control over each individual NanoMesh because they're just instances assigned to cards. At this point, if you wanted to convert it to real geometry, you can go to inventory, one to mesh, or again, geometry, convert BPR to Geo, and now you have actual geometry. You can hold down Control Shift, select all the planes, invert that, delete hidden, and now you've got real Geo for your meshes. And then you go in here and just model it up. Question, I have a sculpt low poly. I import displacement maps from Mari using UDIMs. Okay, I divide my mesh a little 54. Wow. Import the textures and then apply the displacement map. It will apply in a blurred way. There's, I am not by any means the displacement king. So there's some displacement map settings in here, intensity, mode, all of this stuff. I can count on one hand the number of times I've used a displacement map for anything worthwhile. So somebody more familiar with displacement maps, I'll have to chime in on that one. Or you can always go to on Twitter, hashtag #ZBrush, and then they will, if you go to Pixelogic's channel, let's see if I can back out of here. Stream Pixelogic. Sorry, let me see. There is a whole playlist. I think it's got 200 videos in it now, where usually it's Joseph Druss going through. Here it is. ZBrush. Here's the ZBrush playlist. So they will answer all the questions that I cannot. And not to say that they're playing cleanup. They do their own thing. I'm not even. This is a Pavlovich workshop. I just happen to answer questions. I could certainly say, you know what, I'm going to ignore you guys, and we're going to just go ahead and start sculpting. But I'm not going to do that today. How do you merge two meshes, like a head and a body, without DynaMesh? You just merge down. Kind of depends on if you have subdivision history here. So, and it's just the same thing as merging any objects here. So if we go to a cube, let's do Polymesh 3D, go into edit mode, hit X to go across X symmetry, go to brush, insert BI, insert mesh body parts, hit M. We'll grab a male head, and we'll grab this head, and we'll just draw that out, and we'll go ahead and rotate this up. And let's go hit Y to grab our gizmo back. And if we have a body here, let's see if we have a body, brush, insert. And you don't have to hit M, you can actually go up here and scroll. But I'm used to just doing head here. Is there a body in this little tune? Oh, yes, there is. Okay, we'll do a thin body. Okay, so we've got a head and we've got a body here. We don't need that star, so I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that. And now we've got a head and a body, and if these were separate meshes, we can go ahead and split that out. All you would need to do is have one above the other, go down here to merge, and then you can do merge down. However, let's say we have subdivision history on this one and subdivision history on this one. If it's the same level of subdivision history, ZBrush will keep that for you. So you can see I have 3 on there and 3 on there. If I just merge this down, it'll go ahead and merge these down, and I still have my subdivision level history. If you have mismatched, I think it'll go with the highest, but what you can always do is, let's go ahead and delete lower. And if you just merge them down and you lose your subdivision history, you can usually just go in here to reconstruct, and it'll just reconstruct back to your lower res, and then you can use that. So there you go. You can merge any two objects together without DynaMesh. Now, if you want, okay, so I know what you're saying. If you want to like put a head on here and have it connect, okay, I got you. Okay, let's do this. I'm going to go to delete lower and delete hidden, reconstruct. So we've got our lower res head here, and you're going to see there's a poly group right here. And you're also going to see when I go to brush, insert body parts, and I grab that male head that we were using, delete higher. So when I drag this out, you're going to see there's a hole on the bottom. So ZBrush will do a mesh fusion for you. So if I drag this out on that poly group, as long as there's a hole on the bottom of my mesh, and I dragged it out on a poly group, and I don't have DynaMesh turned on, when I control drag, it'll go ahead and sew those up for me. So that'll go ahead and sew up that transition. So there you go. You can do that. This is probably the best character I've ever made in my life. I love it. It's a little bit creepy. You can go in here at the move brush. Now, if you don't like this topology, you can go in here and manually retopologize it, or you can go into Zremesher and it'll retopologize it for you if you have X turned on. Let's go ahead and we will duplicate this off, because Zremesh is going to just kill all this. I'm going to geometry Zremesh. We'll do target polygon kind of same and hit Zremesher. And now we've got new geometry. Of course, there's a lot of different ways to kind of go in with Zremesher and put curves in there and do all the fancy stuff you want to do to kind of maintain what you want to do. You can also, if you just want to make slight modifications, you can just go in here and let's delete that. Where am I at? Geometry, delete. We can go ahead and just clone this off. And then we can go to insert or append ZSphere here. And again, with the ZSphere selected, X, scale it down. I'm just going to put it somewhere in there. And then we just need to go to topology. Instead of going to edit topology, we're going to select topology. We'll just select that topology there. And then we can go and edit topology and then turn off transparent matcap gray. And now you can go on with X mode, you can go through here and be like, you know what, I don't like this topology. So you can hold down Alt and tap, and then you can go in here and just like redraw however you want. However you want. So that way maybe. So question follow up. Substance Painter. Okay, and then importing it back in so I can update the ZBrush to Keyshot content flow. I can send color content to Keyshot, but I want to see it in ZBrush first. Yeah, let me keep using this super awesome guy we're making. And if you're applying color content in ZBrush, if I understand correctly, you'll just have like RGB, and you're just going to be like, let's see, we'll go to color, fill object, let's go to skin shader. And we'll do mRGB color fill object. There we go. And then we'll go here, and then you can just like start poly painting. We'll turn off ZAdd, and we'll just keep RGB now. So, I mean, here's your texture information. We're previewing it in ZBrush, if I understand correctly. And then yeah, when we send this to Keyshot, it'll be poly paint and all that good stuff. Oh, if you want to send. Oh yeah, so if you want to render in Keyshot with the robots, you would have to import in that FBX. You're gonna have to merge together all of, and when you go to merge, if you go to merge here, you're gonna have to turn on UVs so you can merge all the objects that share the same UV shell or the same 0 to 1. Merge those all into one subtool. Go down here to texture. Well, texture. You're gonna want to import your texture, but you're not going to be able to import. That's a tough one because you're not going to be able to import your roughness, your diffuse, your albedo, your base color, however, whatever method you're using to get your nice rendering stuff. That's a tough one. Going through, although you could just do that in Keyshot. I take it back. Although setting that up, I'm not exactly sure how you would do that, but basically you would probably just go into ZBrush here, put your object into Keyshot. Again, if you just want to go to Keyshot, that would just be render, external render Keyshot, and then we'll just hit BPR, and that'll open up Keyshot and send this awesome guy over. And then you would go to texture, import, and Keyshot, but like, getting your roughness map, and then any height map changes you may have made and all that stuff would be interesting. I'm not exactly sure, but let's get a really nice render of this guy while we're waiting. I'd have to look into that. Reset symmetry as default. That should just be under your symmetry properties here, under transform. Activate symmetry. So, if you want to always have it symmetrical on by default. Off the top of my head, first thing in the morning with my brain not really working. For every tool. That I'm not sure. I'm not sure if you can set up a macro for that or not. So that would be a good Ask ZBrush question. Hashtag Ask ZBrush. That might change what I was using FiberMesh to do. ArrayMesh will make it easier to make the followers on my environment work in project work in progress. Yeah, and you can actually, in fact, I think it was on this channel. I think it was on my channel. We did, and it was also on the ZBrush beta testers. If you go to ZBrush Central, and let me see if I can navigate you guys there. There's really good information in here if you haven't been there yet. If you go to ZBrushCentral.com and so here's the gallery, here's 4.8P1 is available. If we click this right arrow here a couple times, you'll see ZBrush 4.8 beta testers gallery. If you go in here, and I think it was on page 4, this is what we did on my channel. We just made vector displacement of the hair or fur. So you can use VDM for fur, and you can also use just NanoMesh. That's one here. So I think it's Pavlander did this for the beta tests, and he also did, so see all this fur right here? You can just use vector displacement and then just apply that as fur for your character. You can also use insert mesh, NanoMesh, and just use ArrayMesh, however you want to do that, to get your fur on there as well. Let's go ahead and get that guy off my screen. There we go. Cool. You can use Zremesh by using alt-click and just a normal click. What's the difference using alt-click? That's just a different algorithm to Zremesh here. So if we take our, I can't stay away from this guy. He's just too good. So if I go over here and I want to do Zremesh here, if I have X symmetry turned on and I do, let's go ahead and delete lower. So we're going to do a Zremesh, target polygon count of 5, change that size down and turn polyframe off. And we don't really need this polypane either, so we'll turn colorize off. So we've got this guy and we want to Z-remesher him. And if I just click Z-remesh with X symmetry turned on and we let this thing go, and then we turn on polyframe here, we're going to see this is the result we get. I'm going to hit Shift-S, do a snapshot here. And now if we go over here and we hold down Alt and tap Z-remesh, that's just going to give you an alternative midline on this. So you're going to see this was not holding down Alt, this is holding down Alt. In this case, didn't really work out for us, but there's going to be some instances where that would be the better option. So there's that. And if we do want to get our subdivisions back, we can go to reconstruct and we'll just grab all those back there and hit Control-N to clear our canvas. Let's say a symmetric object on the arm. How do you keep working on it while it's positioned on the arm? So if we go here, if I understand correctly, if we go to the demo soldier, and that was just comma key, bring up your light box, or you can just tap this and then just going to tool and then just double clicking the demo soldier here. For instance, this bracelet is on the hand. It's symmetrical across the x-axis here, so if we just tap X, we can go in here, and then we can just start Z-modeling or sculpting this thing however we want across symmetry. However, if you were to pose this thing, for example, let's just do a quick, I guess we can use Transpose Master. So if we go over here to our Z plugin, Transpose Master, I'm going to say I want to transpose my mesh here. It's going to put it all into one low-res mesh for me, and then we can go to Mask Lasso, and we'll just mask that out, and then we will rotate this. We'll just hold down, tap Alt, and kind of hold down Alt and just position this thing, and then we'll just kind of rotate this here. So we've rotated this thing. I'm going to go back to T-Pose, back to my subtools. There we go. So now these bracelets are no longer symmetrical across the x-axis here, right? You can do stuff like posable symmetry. So if we have this one here, and assuming he is actually symmetrical across his symmetry here, so you're going to see as I go down his arm with the standard brush Z turned on, it's going to be symmetrical, and then it's going to lose symmetry here. If you go up here to transform, you can turn on, use posable symmetry. And again, assuming your mesh is symmetrical, as you go down the arm, it'll continue to be symmetrical even though the arm is posed. So to like sculpt a bracelet that's not on symmetry, it won't have posable symmetry because it doesn't have a symmetry down the midline. So that's a little tougher. I suppose you could merge them together. You could merge the bracelet or the wrist strap and his body and then still maintain symmetry, and then you could isolate the wrist strap and sculpt. But honestly, it's tough for me. I know you would want to, there's a lot of instances where you would want to like pose a character first and then sculpt on it because it's freeing. I personally, it's just a lot of wasted time for me personally, just because I'm going to put a lot of duplicate work. If I was to pose her out and then try and like sculpt her asymmetrically, that would just be days and days of me sculpting asymmetrically for no reason. I can just sculpt this symmetrically and then pose her at the end, at the very end, and then do a little bit of cleanup work, or change any symmetry I want at the very end, and still have this file to go back to do another pose. Because as soon as you pose something, it's kind of destructive. So I like to stay as non-destructive as possible, so I always have a base to go back to that's non-destructive, and then I can pose her out in 50 different poses and not have to worry about only having a source file that's posed in a certain way. Probably not the best answer, but I would say don't sculpt in symmetry, or don't sculpt asymmetrical if you don't have to, and then pose at the end. Yeah, cool. Thanks for showing up, everybody. So speaking of, let me see if I can, I'm going to load up some, can't you paste it in a layer? You can pose it in a layer. So in fact, if we go over here to Tool and we grab Nick Zuccarello's mesh here, you can go, we don't need polyframe. If you go down here to the layers, or your mesher, layers, you're going to see there are layers here, so you can actually up and down layer. You can do arms to side. Now, of course, these are adding on top of each other, so you probably want to do, so if we turn, you probably just want to turn on one eyeball at a time. So here's arms to the side, here's arms up, and then here's mouth open. So you can do like mouth open, arms up, or you can do mouth open, arms to side. Yeah, you can definitely store your poses in a layer. I am doing good. Thanks for showing up. Let's see. Let's go ahead and let's initialize ZBrush again. We'll go ahead and clear all this stuff out. There we go. And then we'll go grab our little sculpt we're working on here. And, oh yeah, I'm having a delivery that might show up at 8 o'clock a.m. on the dot. So if I get a phone call, I apologize. So, okay. I got this thing here. We've got our boot reference. Let's go ahead and like detail this thing up just a little bit. So, what kind of reference do I want to put in here? So if I want to like start adding detail to this, again, this is just a dynamically subdivided mesh. So again, it's super simple, but when you hit D, that's going to turn on our dynamic subdivs here. If we wanted to go ahead and put like a divot in here, all we need to do is we can make a new start group for this. So I'm going to go ahead and hold down Shift and shoot that to the top. And we'll make a new start group for these ones. And then anything I put in this start group, I can use this as subtractive mesh, intersection mesh, all that good stuff. BI brush insert, we'll go to the insert Booleans here. We'll hit M, or you can just scroll through here. We can just grab this one here. If we drag that out on our mesh, it's going to be just part of the mesh, right? But I'm going to want to go to the split menu, subtool split, and we're going to go to split unmask points. The reason I do unmask points is because it keeps this mesh in our start group. I'm going to turn off that start group. I'm going to turn off subtractive, and now when I go into my live Boolean render right up here, you're going to see now we're getting adding detail to our mesh here. And of course this is live, so you can just go ahead and just modify however you want, or you can hold down Control and drag out a copy, and you can do this here. Where'd it go? Let's go out of render mode there. Oh, there we go. So this section needs to interpenetrate the mesh there, so we'll go ahead and push this back in here. There we go. And now when you go back into our Boolean render, you're going to see it's updating. However, when I have W selected, I can just cycle through all of these things if I want to test and see, like, oh, what is this one going to look like? So you can kind of go through and just change what's going to cut into your mesh here. And then, of course, you can just kind of move this around. And there you go. So that's one way to add Boolean detail, the live Boolean detail to your object. If you're just kind of testing stuff out and concepting, you can also just use alphas to do this stuff too. So if we go ahead and delete that, and we'll turn off these start groups here. So you've got this one here. This is an actual geometry here. So when I want to go start sculpting on this thing, or maybe going into our brush chisel rectangle here. It's like, oh, I want to put an alpha detail on this, and I drag it out. It's not going to do anything because, again, if I hit Shift D, that's the actual geometry. So if you want to do that, you're going to have to apply that and then probably even subdivide it, Control D, subdivide it a little bit more, and now you can go ahead and stamp alpha detail on this thing. So a couple different ways. Or, you know, and the reason why you would have dynamic subdivs is if you want to go in here and start making changes. Is there any cool changes I want to make? Like it just keeps it low enough so if you wanted to go in here and like continue Z modeling here, and let's go ahead and say we want to mask these and then shoot those in there and kind of pull these back here. So now when we hit D, there's our dynamically subdivided, so we can just continue to modify this with our dynamic subdivisions on to get a different look like that. I hope not either. I was thinking making hard surface complex stuff is good with DynaMesh, but the hard part is to make the DynaMesh complex model to low poly, so I wonder if the best is to start with low poly model anyways. I personally hate dealing with low poly. It seems it's very limiting to me. Let's take something. Let's do. Dang, did I already do all the big pieces? Okay, let's take this piece here. I'm going to alt tap this one. Let's say we want to use DynaMesh to kind of fix or add detail to this thing. Whenever I'm dealing across an axis here and I want to do a lot of clipping or slicing, I hate having to deal with one on one side. And ZBrush is going to go negative to positive when I mirror it. So I'm going to go out of X symmetry here, hold down Control, Shift, and Alt, and delete hidden on that one. And we'll delete lower. So we've got a mesh here, and it's got subdivisions on it. We can reconstruct our subdivision history if we want to go back down to our lower. But in this case, we want to just use this as a base mesh to kind of sculpt on here. So what I'm going to do is go in here. It's going to be under Geometry. DynaMesh is where all the settings are going to be. I'm just going to use my custom menu here. And the custom menu is just custom. If you want to make your own custom menu, I will. I'm sure there's other places. Again, Pixelogics. Z Classroom and stuff will have this too, but if you go to my Intro to ZBrush Part 2 playlist, you're going to see custom hotkeys, custom interface, custom menu. If you want this particular custom menu for any reason, I have that available for download. It's not anything special, but if you're interested, you can go to my Gumroad page, and if you scroll down to the very bottom, you're going to see an Intro to ZBrush files. Doesn't cost you anything. It's free. You just need to, you can grab that and then you can have that custom menu. Again, make your own custom menus. It's super easy to do and it's super easy to assign a hotkey to it. But if for some reason you really want this thing, then it's all yours. So anyway, we want to detail this thing up, but we want to use DynaMesh. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and do turn off project, turn off blur, crank that resolution up. We can have projection on with the new sub-projection to keep our details sharp, but I'm going to go ahead and just skip that, and we're just going to hit DynaMesh. No, I don't want to main free subdivision history. And now we just have a DynaMesh we can kind of work with here. So I'm going to go into H-polish here, and we'll do a little bit of cleanup work here, and smooth brush. I'm going to change my smooth brush to smooth stronger, which for you guys will probably be in your brush menu here under the smooth, QRS, smooth. You can do smooth stronger in here, which is really just going into your, I got a lot of menus open. Brush, smooth brush modifiers. It's changing the weighted smooth mode here for smooth stronger to 1, which is smooth stronger. And that'll just allow me a little bit more flexibility when I smooth. I can hold down Shift and then drop that intensity down if I don't want to smooth that strongly. So we've got our Zremesh here, and let's say, you know what? I want this to be a little bit more punched in. So I'm going to go here to my standard brush. I'm going to clone that standard brush. Now it's standard 1. I'm going to do a drag dot and grab that alpha 06, change that focal shift to -100, and now we can just hold down Alt, and that'll just kind of stamp in. You can change that Z intensity as well. So that'll just kind of give us a little bit more leeway in there. Now, of course, again, if we want to just use our H-polish, we'll just do a little bit of cleanup on the bottom here. DynaMesh as you want to. So let's see, how do I want to kind of modify this thing? This is where it gets into like, well, let's see how we want to do this. Probably let's slice and dice this thing up first. So what I'm going to do is hold down Control Shift, and we're going to go to SliceCurve. And the cool thing about 4R8 is that you can now, I'm going to hit Control W to make this all one poly group here. And if we do, let's turn off line so you can see this a little bit better. With 4R8, when we do our slices, it's going to not add a new poly group whenever we slice. It makes it a lot easier to use the group options with our DynaMesh. So what am I talking about? Let's say For example, we want to have like this corner over here kind of pop out and like insert into our mesh here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn to the side here and hold down Control Shift, and we're just going to drag out our line, tap Alt once to kind of get a softer curve. If you tap Alt twice, that'll do a sharp curve. But what we're going to do is do Alt once for kind of a soft curve here. And then if you have groups turned on with your DynaMesh, when you DynaMesh this thing, it'll go ahead and DynaMesh for you. But now when you hold down Control Shift, it'll just be one solid mesh. So what we're going to do is I'm going to hold down Control Shift to isolate this one. And now we're going to slice through here. And then with groups options again turned on, we can Control Shift drag, and that'll just, you know, make this all one solid piece. Now if I want to put these two pieces together, just a simple matter of going in here to your select rectangle, grabbing Control Shift click this one, Control Shift drag to invert, Control W make it all one polygroup, and then DynaMesh again with groups turned on, and now these are all one solid mesh. So now I've got this little stranded piece hanging out here. So if I want to make it look like this is like a little piece that you can kind of like, it's like maybe a little tab you can pull out, you can just hold down Alt with the gizmo W selected, and we can just kind of, whoops, let's hold down, since it's all one subtool here, if we hold down Control, it'll automatically mask that one subtool. So we hold down Control and tap this one, and then we can just kind of push this in here. And now it'll look like this is like a little piece that's kind of embedded in there, like so. If you want to, you can also isolate this one, and let's go ahead and smooth, hold down Shift, and we'll just kind of smooth those border transitions there real quick. And same thing for this one. If you want to, you can go in here and kind of smooth this out. If you want to make it look like, what's something we could do? Oh, and there's, depending on the resolution of your DynaMesh, you might have some artifacts here, but those are easy enough to just kind of smooth out there. So now this thing, it's kind of embedded in there, but let's make it look like it's something you would pull tab. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go Control Shift tap this one, hold down mask pin here, and we'll just start like, we'll maybe mask this, hit W, hold down Alt and go to the unmasked center, and then we can just kind of like maybe pull this out if we want to, and then bring everything back. And then again, DynaMesh with groups on, it's going to keep these two objects, you know, it's still DynaMesh, but it's DynaMeshing them separately. So when I go in here, you know, it's still DynaMesh, but now these are separate objects here. Now for this one here, we can go back to our standard brush, hit B, go to standard one. We got that hole in there, so we can kind of like, oh, we'll put some screws in there or something like this. And also we want to give it a little bit of a rough texture here. So let's go ahead and swap that out. I'm going to go into my comma key, alphas, military, and there's like these things here. Let's do this little 3. Just double click this one. As long as these are 16-bit grayscale, it'll, if you double click these, it'll automatically shoot them over here to your alpha menu. So I'm going to go over here to drag rect, and now we can just kind of, you know, drag out a little bit of bumpy detail. That's too much. You can drop that intensity down, and now you can kind of just drag out a little bit of bumpy detail on there. And that'll make it look like a little battery compartment grip that you can kind of just rub your thumb along and kind of grip it. If you are just going to like pull tab this thing out, I mean, you can add a little handle in here if you want to, or let's go grab our standard brush again. Let's go back in our comma key, and let's say, you know what, I need to tell them what direction we want to pull that thing. So I'm going to grab this little arrow right here, and then we can go hold down Alt, and we can kind of just put in a couple arrows here. Let's kind of put that in there, and we can also go in here to brush, insert, BI. Let's go to the model toolkit here, and we'll hit M, or you can just scroll through here. But first I'm going to tap M. We'll say, you know what, let's drop just a little bit of a detail in here. Let's grab this one here. You can do it up here if you want. Let's like, you can put the, if you go out of solo mode, you'll see it won't disappear on you. So you can just drop that one in there. You can go ahead and do split mask points, and that'll keep it selected. And then you can just go ahead and just drop that down if you want to. Do the same thing on the other side. But if you wanted to put like screws in there, brush, insert, there's screws in the model toolkit that are like flathead. You can also go to industrial parts there. There's more. Let's go the flathead way. And by flat, I just mean like this little flat top here. And now we can just drop those in. If you want to make sure they're the same size, turn off live Boolean. We don't need that. Drag that out. Q, brush, insert, model toolkit. How come I don't have access to, I don't want to do dot stroke. I want to do another stroke. I want to do, that is drag. Okay, so it's automatically drag right. Okay, that makes sense. you can hold down Control. It does it automatically for you. So when you drag something out, you hold down Control. It's going to snap it to your brush size. I'm dumb. My brain is gone. I'm sorry, guys. So let's do size of 3 or size of 2, and that'll snap it to your brush size here. And now you can go through here and you can just hold that Control and it'll snap it. So you can kind of do that, and then you can just isolate these ones out and go ahead and then split hidden. And now you've got those kind of in there. You can hit D to do your dynamic preview. And now you can start, you're using DynaMesh to kind of, slice and dice and add insert mesh brushes and add drag alphas on there and do all that kind of cool stuff. That makes sense? Again, I apologize if I miss any comments. I'm just going to kind of take a quick look through here. Cheap price tab to work on in ZBrush. I use, and this thing isn't that expensive, it's the Wacom Intuos Pro Medium. So it's nothing too fancy. I would say get 1024 levels of pressure sensitivity on whatever you buy if you can. You can buy used too if you want to. If you want to see my exact setup, actually this will probably be even easier. Let's see, Twitch TV. If you go to my Twitch TV channel here, and you scroll down to the bottom, there's PC specs, and you can see all the PC specs that I'm using there. And if you click on the PC specs button, it'll take you to this YouTube video, and I talk about my girlfriend, which is my wife actually, and then you can see, I guess I made that video a long time ago. You can go through here and you can see my setup that I have right now. As we speak, it's what I'm using. I am going to be in the market for a new computer soon, so I'll keep you updated on that if you're a hardware person. Cool. Switching through subtools. So I've got a lot of subtools in here, and I hate renaming subtools as I'm kind of working. Like if I had to sit here and go like, oh, I need to rename these alt, So what I'm basically doing is I'm holding on Alt and I'm tapping through my different subtools here. So if I hold down Alt and just tap, it'll grab the subtool for me, so I can just use that visually. Now if I just want to work on a couple things at once, like say I want to work on this knee pad, I want to put them all in the same space in my subtool scene file here. I'm going to hold down Shift and shoot that to the top with this bent up arrow. Alt tap this one, shoot it to the top, Alt tap this one, shoot it to the top, Alt tap this one, shoot it to the top, hold down Shift, turn off the eyeball, hit the nameplate, and then I know that all of those are all right together here. So I'm just have those ones visible available to me. And then I can just continue, modifying this thing as needed. Cool. So yeah, let's see what else we got. Let's go ahead and turn this off here. Oh yeah, and if I want to, it's like, okay, I've done one side. Well, I'm doing all this work, whereas how does it get to the other side? That's just a matter of going over here to making sure you have local sim turned off, and then you can just do a quick mirror and weld, and then you can hit X to go across X symmetry here, and then you got that on that side, and then same thing for Alt tap, mirror and weld, Alt tap, mirror and weld. That's geometry, modify topology, mirror and weld, by the way. And now you touch these and then toggle X back on as well, so you can go across symmetry here, and now you're free to do whatever you want to across symmetry. But yeah, it's just a bunch of that stuff. So if I was to go, going through here and detailing this stuff, you can use live Booleans if you want to, or DynaMesh, or the combination of the two, or ZModeler. Just go through and ZModeler this stuff. You're going to see like there's these little alpha punch outs and like little handles and little pull tabs and little recessed hose areas. If we hit F here, whoa, zoom out just a little bit there. You're going to see like, yeah, there's like a little pull handle in there you can kind of grab and pull that out, and it'll unlatch these things, little hose things. And if we want it, we'll draw hoses eventually on this thing as well. We're kind of just going through and detailing this. This is still, excuse me, dynamic sub D here. So yeah, if we want to do the same thing here, if we do Shift D, now we're just Z modeling, right? Just go through here and just Z model details in there as needed. But then if you want to, again, you can DynaMesh this thing, you can live Boolean, and do all that detail stuff we were talking about. Cool. Let's see what else we want to do here. We've got these elbows going. We've got this thing going. Let's put some screws in here just to make it look like it's little bit more robust. So again, we're going to go back to our standard brush that we made, and we'll drop in this alpha. Let's do alpha 6. Now, you see alpha 6 has a little bit of fuzz on it. If you want to do a harsh one, do alpha 14. Excuse me. And now you can hold down Alt, and we'll do a drag dot, and that'll go ahead and keep them all the same size. And then you can do it. Now, this is just cycling out alphas. If you wanted to do this with actual geometry, that's where you get into the, and with multiple alphas at once, that's where you get into the brush chisel rect. This is just an example video. Again, if you want to see how to make these brushes and do all this stuff really quickly, just go to the ZBrush 408 What's New playlist on my YouTube channel, and then I'll walk you through it's called Mixing 2D and 3D Alpha Brushes. Multi-alpha brush from images is in there. Multi-alpha brush is number 19. So all it really is, long story short, is just having any mesh on your and oriented, let's just do it. Let's say those are cool, but you know what? I want to do something myself. So I'm going to grab the cylinder 3D, go into edit mode, make it a poly mesh, and we're just going to do it initialize here, and we're going to do H divide to like 12, and then V divides to 3 here, and then we'll go ahead and do make poly mesh 3D. So then if we want to do something custom, we can go in here and do like bevel, edge loop complete. We'll just kind of bevel this in, and then we can go to like inset, polygroup island, region, pull this in here, and then we can do Q mesh. Actually, let's do inset again. So we can kind of inset this again, and now we can do Q mesh, polygroup island. But when I Q mesh this down, it'll pull straight down. But if I hold down Shift, it'll just pull that down. So that'll give me a nice kind of inset region in here. And then if I want to kind of bubble this transition out, I mean, I can just go in here and do like crease, polygroup, crease tolerance here, and hit D, and that'll give me my dynamic preview here. If I want to, I can go in here to my edge, insert multiple edge loops, interactive elevation, and now I can just kind of pull and kind of round this off if I want to. So I can kind of pull that, round it off. And if I don't want that crease, just crease, edge loop complete, hold down Alt, and that'll just kind of round that transition a little bit for me. What else we want to do? We can go through here, we can do insert single edge loop, and we can kind of insert an edge loop here. And now that we have an edge loop here, we can also do radial symmetry. So if I go over here to our transform, we can do activate symmetry in the Y. Yeah, in the Y here, and if we do a radial count of 8, that will, oh, you know what is this? How many did I do? I don't remember what I initialized this at. Let's do 6. There we go. So now if I tap Alt there, okay. So you can do radial count here. So now if I bring this in, that'll Q mesh out, or you can Q mesh in if you want to, and that'll get you that kind of look. You can hit D, and you can kind of see. Let's go ahead and just do our crease tolerance there. There we go. So now let's go ahead and uncrease. Let's go crease, edge, hold down Alt, and we can uncrease that. If we want to smooth these actually let's uncrease these as well. So when you're doing stuff in radial symmetry, it actually goes pretty quickly because you're only doing it on one object here, and then you can go in here and you can do, let's do insert single edge loop, and you can kind of just dial in the sharpness on that if you want to insert a single edge loop and kind of get that look. So, once you have what you're looking for here, then we can go back to brush, and I'm not saying you'd want it to look like that, that's pretty crappy, but go to chisel rectangle, and then you will do a brush from mesh, it'll throw it at the end, and now you can select that as an alpha. You see it's converting it to on the fly to an alpha. If for some reason you wanted your alpha to look like this, all you need to do is orient it, hold down Shift to snap it, make sure perspective's turned off. I don't think that matters, but I don't usually work on perspective for hard edge stuff, so it's usually off anyway. And then from mesh, and now you've captured that alpha from that direction. So as you cycle through here, it'll give you a different alpha, and it's all in one brush. Can't beat that. Okay, let's see. Okay, yeah, if you want, yeah, the ZModeler brush is in the Z Classroom as well. I also have just a quick intro to ZBrush part 3 on my YouTube channel, has a ZModeler walkthrough as well. It's just kind of the basics here. And I don't, ZModeler was R7, so it's about a couple years old. If I turn off X, yeah, if you hold down, if you're over on a face and you hold the space bar, these are your face options. Hover over an edge, these are all your edge options. We want to go insert multiple. We can just insert multiple edge loops. And again, we have interactive elevation turned on. If you don't want that, just go to specified elevation of 0. And now you can insert multiple edge loops here. And then a face operation is like QMesh is a good one. You can QMesh in and out. Now I have polygroup island, so it's because this polygroup isn't touching any other polygroups like it, it'll just do this one. If I want to do all of them, I got to go to QMesh polygroup all, and I'll do all of them. And then I can hit D, and now it's got that look. Yeah, and again, if we do D and Shift D, that's giving us our dynamic preview here, which is up here. So yeah, ZModeler in conjunction with this dynamic or QGrid. If you just want to start over, just QCube initialize. So here's our QCube. And the cool thing is too, if we go over here to our QGrid and we turn that up and we change our coverage here, because it's just, and we can turn smooth down if we want to, or we'll leave it at 1. Because it's just a preview, if I hit Shift D, this is our actual geometry. So again, we can hold down Alt. Let's go across X symmetry here. Hold down Alt to paint. Mirror and weld. Oh, we have X. Okay, transform. Activate symmetry in the X, but not radial symmetry. There we go. So now as we're doing this, we hit D, it's going to look like it's subdivided, but in reality it's not. It's just a preview. So you can just really quickly go through here and get a really nice look. The other cool thing about QMesh is if you don't like something, you can just, if we go QMesh single poly, you can just pull that back through and it'll snap these out, so you don't have to deal with those. You can also bridge pieces, so we pull this out, it'll stick them together. Speaking of bridge, if we go over here to delete a single poly, we can delete the single poly, then we can go over here to close, not bridge, 2 holes, and we'll do small round corners. So we tap this open edge and then this open edge, and then we can just put in a little bridge across there, and then you can continue to, like, let's do insert, or you can just do a mirror and weld. That'll put a midline down here, and then we can do insert single edge loop and just dial in an edge loop here, and then we'll go back to QMesh polygroup all. Let's do single poly. Now with single poly, I didn't have to Alt drag that, and Alt, all it does is just give you a temporary paint selection here. You can also use that to paint polygroups here. So for example, if I'm Alt painting here and I want to inherit those yellow, I can tap Shift, and now when I Alt paint and let go, it'll just paint with yellow. So now those are all part of the yellow group. So now when I do QMesh polygroup all, it's going to grab all of those yellow polygroups. Or you can go in here to group by normals and then do a quick mirror and weld to make sure, and then that'll look at your normal angle and just give you polygroups for every normal angle. And you can disregard polygroups if you want to. If you want to say, you know, for example, all these upward facing are all in part of the flat plane on the same level. So you can tell QMesh to look at in front or behind, and it'll take everything that's in front of this plane and QMesh it, or everything that's in front of this plane here. If these were different polygroups here, it'll just still take all of those at once because it's just taking all of those. Or you can do flat island, and it'll take all of the flat island there regardless of polygroup. So it depends on what target you want is going to dictate that. So a way to sculpt based on the object axis, like for gauntlets where they're at an angle. Yes. There's a couple different ways. I mean, you can, let me see. If I go here, and we've got a pair of gloves on, and we want to, like, we have a ring around our wrist. Let me think. Because you can do an ArrayMesh that you can put in the center of your world, and you can sculpt on it and have it ArrayMesh out as instances into the position that you want. You can also use NanoMesh if you want to. Speaking of NanoMesh, we actually use NanoMesh. All these little buttons here, if we tap these ones and I go to NanoMesh and we turn on Show Placement, you're going to see that these are just cards. If I turn off NanoMesh off, you're going to see I just have a bunch of cards around my character here. So NanoMesh on, and then show placement here is off, and then solo mode. So that way, if I ever want to modify these things, I can go to brush, insert. Let's see if this will work. I haven't actually tried it yet. We'll go to clothing hardware, and we'll grab this one right here, and then we can go to edit mesh. Well, if we do edit mesh, that's just going to throw my mesh here, and I can just make modifications as I want to. Then when I'm done editing, I can go back out here and it'll propagate all my edits to my NanoMesh cards. But I can also go to replace NanoMesh from brush, and if I got this one selected, I can just click that one, and now I've replaced all of those buttons at once without having to go through and redraw insert mesh brushes. Now, of course, it looks like X rotation needs to be at 0 for this one, and now they're all replaced here. So that's just an easy win for using NanoMesh properties. So yeah, again, if we do that show placement, that's just going to bring those cards back so you can actually see what it is. It's just a bunch of inset, or what's it called? Well, actually, let's change that Y offset. There we go. That centers them out. And it all does it all at once. So really, I'm just moving around a bunch of cards, so I don't need to worry about, again, replacing all these buttons with something else. Now, if I want to, that's when I would go to one to mesh and make it actual geometry when I'm ready. But I'm not ready yet. So any details like that, you can use NanoMesh. You can also use NanoMesh on a gauntlet. So if you have a gauntlet that you're modeling and you apply it to a plane, it'll just NanoMesh, and you can just go to Edit Mesh and edit it. Let me think. You can, like when you're Z modeling, you can change the axis here. So if this is just an arbitrary axis here, we turn off X symmetry, and we just kind of rotate this thing like so. You still have your pivot set there. However, if it's arbitrary, if it's just off in space, you can do your S pivot and move your pivot there temporarily, or you can turn on L sim. But if it's arbitrarily rotated, that's not going to work. So if it's offset and rotated, probably ArrayMesh would be my best bet. Unless I'm missing something obvious here, which I very well could be. I am by no means the expert. Yes, ZModeler can have array, and that's part of one of the cool things here. So if we want to do, in fact, if we want to take this thing and put on a cool array mesh, let's see what cool array meshes we have. We're going to go to Lightbox Array Presets, and let's grab this one here. And now we have this thing arrayed in this direction here. So as we're modeling this thing, we want to put little spikes on here. Now let's go across X symmetry here, Q. So as we're, single poly. There we go. So as we're updating these things, you're going to see they're updating on the fly. Let's go ahead and lock position and size. And then we can go in here with our move brush. And we can, as we're moving these things around, it's going to update as well. And you can even turn this into a DynaMesh. So if we like the way this looks, let's go ahead and go to Geometry, Dynamic Apply, and then with that look, let's go ahead and crank up our, not crank it up too much, DynaMesh resolution. There we go. So now these are all DynaMesh meshes, so we can go in here with our clay brush, or smooth brush. Let's go ahead and drop that resolution down. I lied. I forgot that I was working at ZBrush primitive size, not my lady size. There we go. So if you just want to kind of concept out like a weird spine or something, you can go through here and just kind of start DynaMeshing. You go to brush insert, body parts here. Let's grab a hand, stick those in and DynaMesh them together, and now we've got this DynaMesh thing. If you don't want to see that for some reason, you can go over here to your ArrayMesh and turn it off temporarily and just kind of work on whatever you're working on, and then you can just turn it back on. And now it's propagating out. So ZModeler works, anything works with ArrayMesh. In fact, ArrayMesh works with live Boolean if you want it to. If we go over here to subtool here, we'll go ahead and append a sphere. And we'll grab this one. Let's say we want the sphere to be our start. I mean, this is just two objects. You don't need to do a start group. But if you wanted to, you can now turn that into a live Boolean. And now if we scale this up, and then we turn on our live Boolean, you're going to see as we're moving this thing around, it will go ahead and it's going to go ahead and slice through a mesh here. So turn live Boolean off, and this is me moving down my original mesh down here. So if I go in here with W, as I'm updating this thing, it's also updating as the live Boolean's working here. So you can kind of work on that on the fly as well. Everything just kind of works just because it's polygons, you know, so it'll all work together. It's not the greatest example there, but you get the idea. Probably a better example would be, let's go into solo mode here. I'm going to go ahead and just do a quick QCube initialize here, and then go out of solo mode, transparency on. I just want to reset this, so we'll go ahead and reset this, turn off X symmetry here, and then if we go back to our array mesh, we'll go ahead and delete all these. So we'll delete. And then we'll turn on array mesh, and now we can just do a simple offset just to kind of demonstrate a little bit better. In fact, instead of doing that one, I'm just going to hit Y or tap this icon up here, and I'm going to use transpose. And now when I use transpose here and we set our repeats, now as we're repeating this thing, I can go through here. If I turn off transpose, now I can use transpose to actually scale this object out, or we can go back to our gizmo and scale this thing out. So as we're doing this here and we have our live Boolean turned on, now we're using ArrayMesh to kind of divide into our object here, and then again, you know, we can change our repeats on the fly if we want to and do whatever we want, and it'll just work. You can use ArrayMesh an object. Yeah. Yeah, and a keyboard and a mouse. You can do keyboard and a mouse with ZModeler, but anything past that, like, and that's the other thing too, with live Boolean, if we take this one and we just make it a quick DynaMesh as well. That's a big DynaMesh here. Let's say. So if this is just a DynaMesh, you can use this to kind of just start sculpting. And again, with the live Boolean, it'll just update on the fly. So if we just start sculpting on this thing and then hold down Shift, and let's drop that way down. Yeah. It's beeping at me. So when I have quick saved on and I have a bunch of stuff up here, it will, and it probably saved that, but we weren't working anything important. Your quick save options, let's talk about that. And you know what? We don't need Keyshot anymore. Let me jump back into Keyshot. It's pause. We go ahead and kill that. To save your changes, discard. There we go. Cool. So when you go to quick save here, you'll have your recover tool. This is the recover tool we're working on. If you double click that, that'll just load it back up. And then we go back into matcap and then hit Alt R. There we go. Quick save options are under preferences. Quick save here. So if you know, every 20 minutes is too much or too little, you can change that. And then if you ever leave ZBrush to browse the internet or whatever, you can change that restoration to update that as well. So yeah, and then we can go in here to the brush insert Boolean here, and because it's already subtractive, we can go ahead and just start automatically bringing in new meshes here. Now, this has an array mesh turned on and onto it, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to this object here, drag that out, go ahead and split unmasked points, and then we'll change that to an subtractive. Now, with this one selected, if I hit D, that's going to toggle on dynamic preview, so see how it smooths it out? You can toggle that on and off. And if you want to, you can go out of, oops, don't want to do render here. I'll turn live Boolean off, Alt R, that's my bad. So if we want to make changes to that, we can go into solo mode here. And then we can go in here, we can do like, yeah, let's do polyloop, polygroup here, and we can tap Alt, and then we can do like QMesh, polygroup all. We can just do whatever we want to there. And then we would go back out of solo mode, turn our render back on. You're going to see it's updating here, and then hit D, and that'll give us our dynamic preview. So all on the fly, all super fast, easy. Cool. Demo on C waves. C waves. I guess I would use alphas for that. There's a cool. Yeah, I'm not the expert at C waves, but I'll give it a shot. If you go here to terrain, you have a interesting mesh. You've got down here to initialize. You have a V profile and H profile, so you could probably dial in like a cool C wave pattern. And you could either use this as a start for your C waves, as kind of like, oh, I want my C waves to kind of look like this, let's say. And then if you want to, you can, we'll go back to our chisel rectangle, and again, you can make your own brush if you want to. But we can go ahead and now do, let's go ahead and subdivide this up a couple times here. So, and you know, go in here and sculpt, let's make a polymesh 3D. Q, Alt S. So you can go in here and like sculpt your waves, however you want to do waves. Waves. I'd have to research waves and how to sculpt them. I'm sure there's like a good noise. If we go over here to surface, noise, let's see if we can't modify this even further with like surface noise. Here we'll crank the strength up and the plugin scale. So we can kind of do, and just like really go crazy with like, I don't even know what is a wave really. If we're on low enough resolution here, we can just apply that to our mesh, and that'll just kind of give us a basic noise here. Once you have that, you can add that to a multi-alpha brush, or you can just do grab brush. But if we go here to our chisel rectangle, we can do brush from mesh, and now we have that as an alpha. And now you can use that to go to our sphere, make polymesh 3D, and then you can go, you know, when you select this, you'll get an alpha of that, and then you'll divide this up. And now you might need to play, I don't know if going in here, let's change our focal shift to 0. That'll kind of soften out that transition. Or under the alpha menu here, you can go in here to modify, and you can do this radial fade, and that'll kind of fade out the edges as well. And if you want to, you can also change that from drag rect to like dots, stroke, lazy mouse on. You can just like drag out waves. It's not the best. Oh, if you did want to do like a wave that undercuts and isn't just an alpha, that would probably be better. Let's go ahead and go to, I'm going to hit comma key here. We're going to go to project, miscellaneous, and we're going to grab that 3D brush template. And now what we can do is we'll use snake hook brush, and we'll just kind of pull out like a wave that kind of overlaps here. And this is going to look more like a spike, but I think you'll get the idea. So here's a wave here, and if we change the draw menu resolution, you can dial the resolution up or down. Once you're done working on this, if you'll notice, we have brush, we have a chisel 3D, we have a chisel creature. We can throw it into chisel creature here. So with these ones, there's a bunch of vector displacements in here, and vector displacement means we can have undercuts, so it's going to grab the underneath of this. So now if we go brush to mesh, oops, that's going to replace our mesh there. Let's not do that. Actually, we can just modify this if we want to. Let's reconstruct. No. Should be able to reconstruct. I wonder why we can't. Anyway, if we want to take this back down to our original thing here, we can go to deformation, morph to grid. There we go. And now we can just, you know, pull out our wave here. Here's our sweet wave. And now instead of, see, brush, chisel, creature here, instead of doing to mesh, we go from mesh, and that'll go ahead and grab, it'll throw the vector displacement up here. Although now that I think about it, I probably should just use the plane that we started with, because that's going to be a lot of information. That'll still work, I think. Okay, so we'll do from mesh here, sure. Is it gonna do it? Let's back out. Let's do this the right way without me messing it up. Okay, so again, snake hook or move, grab this out. If we move too much of it, and we're like, oh, you know what? You don't want to kind of damage the borders of this thing, so I'm gonna go ahead and mask these out. Invert that mask, and then we can just go morph to grid, snap those back out. So we've got our wave here, and now we want to go to, again, our brush, chisel, creature, and then we'll do, let's go ahead and subdivide that, drop that up one more time. Crap. Mask, mask. I think there's one with polygroups that's probably a little bit easier to use. I should probably find that. There we go. Oh, morph to grid. Okay. So now we have that. We can go from mesh. Okay, is that going to work? From mesh, we have this 3D alpha. I want to add it. So we've got our wave there, and then yeah, if we grab our sphere here, now we can go back into our stroke and say, you know what, we want to do a dot stroke with the lazy mouse turned on. And now we can do, yes, make it Polymesh 3D, divide it up. And now we can kind of drag out waves, and now we've got undercuts with those waves as well. Just to show you that, if you do drag rect, you're going to see that's going to pull that out there. So, not a wave expert, obviously, as you can see, but probably noise. I would guess noise is maybe your best option, maybe. That's a tough one. I don't sculpt a lot of waves. Hey Yarv, thanks for showing up. Show the new rock pack Pablo released using vector displacements. Yeah, let's see if I still have those things. Brush. Again, I don't do a whole lot of rock sculpting. Speaking of Pablo, I'm going to be doing on Thursday, I'm going to be going through ZBrush stylized rendering using his document that he made. Let me see if I can find that. Let's see. There's a page here. ZBrush guides. Come on. Visit page. There we go. So we're going to be going over this on my channel Thursday here. So you can go to the ZBrushGuides.com and then resources. There's a rock pack under brushes here. And when I was installing the new stuff, I might have lost those. So if I don't have those, I guess I can do it really quick. We'll talk about installing brushes now. So if I go down here to downloads, let's see if I still have them. Give me a second. Vector displacement maps.zip. Let's see if this works. I'm not sure exactly what those are, but it seems right. So I'm going to go over here to ZBrush for R8, ZBrushes, and I'm going to go to, oh, you know where I might have those? Give me a second. Let me grab, because these are old here, so if I go to ZBrushes, date modified, rocks, no, that's all old stuff. Dang. All right, well, let's see what this does. So I'm going to make a new one here. Whoops. So in this folder, ZBrush 408 ZBrushes, new folder. If I go in here, I'm going to take these vector displacement maps, and I'm going to see what this is. So 7-zip extract here. Fingers crossed. Oh, no, these are... That's for us, Houdini stuff we're doing. Cool Houdini stuff. That'll be coming out soon, I hope. So that'll be another cool one. But not what I was looking for. Oh, I can't find it. No, I can't go over the rock stuff. But if you want to go over the rock stuff, there's a link for you. Go to ZBrushGuides.com and you can download his new rock stuff. I have them somewhere. I just don't know exactly where they are right now because when I did a fresh install, I lost all that stuff and I never got it back. Yeah, and the vector displacement stuff is fairly straightforward. Again, if you go to my website, there's in the ZBrush 408 what's new. It's not too many videos, I don't think. Let's see. How are we doing on time, actually? Okay, we got 15 minutes. Playlists here. Yeah, ZBrush 408 what's new. So, as I walk you through the vector brush is better than I just did. How come you can't use DynaMesh to create vector displacement? Yeah, it's so basically vector displacement has to be projected from this plane in order for it to calculate these undercuts here. So that's why you can't use insert mesh brushes. All you can do, literally, is project from this plane. If you're not projecting from this plane, then it's not going to be a vector displacement. It's going to store it as a 2D alpha displacement. So yeah, that's why you can't even, yeah, you can't do anything but project from this plane here. Cool. Yeah, and the cards that I was using on the character is, let me just go ahead and initialize here in case anybody missed that. Here we go. So, okay, so we're doing streaming, there's email high res. For example, if we're doing vector displacements, let's do a couple examples here. So, when we were talking about these NanoMesh things, these are simply taking, NanoMesh can be on any surface. So if I go here and we do our cube 3D, make polymesh 3D, initialize cube. Okay, X. And then let's do our fancy stuff too. So we'll go to geometry here and dynamic subdiv, Q grid, and then smooth subdiv down, and then coverage here. So we've got our little Q grid thing here, and then as we're Q meshing the heck out of this thing, like so, and you can just keep doing that if you want to, if you do polygroup island or whatever. And you know what? We'll go ahead and close this off. And oh, here's another thing. Yeah, so you can go here, and we did this before. We can go to split point, and that'll go ahead and split a point for you. If you just tap, that'll maintain this exact same point split, and then Q mesh polygroup all. And when you do Q mesh, it'll actually seal all that up for you. So now you've got that look going. But if we do NanoMesh on this thing here, if we do insert NanoMesh on polygroup all, it's just going to insert it on just the ones that have a polygroup assigned to it. If you do all polygons, it'll disregard polygroups and just assign a NanoMesh to that. If you want to change that NanoMesh here, you can hit M and you can swap it out for anything you have stored there, or you can create a NanoMesh brush. If you go to brush, insert, BI, and we'll go to something simple, industrial parts here. With all of these selected, or with this brush selected, you can go to brush, and create NanoMesh brush, and that'll take all of those. You can also go up to the brush menu here and do that in the create menu. But now you can cycle through these. So it's like, let's do this as NanoMesh. And now we can do NanoMesh all polygons here. And once you've done that, now you can go here to your NanoMesh properties here. And now you can do like, I want to fill all of them, or fit it, or proportional, and then do a size. You can scale them up and down. So it doesn't have to be a plane. It's just that on my character, I have a plane with the NanoMesh applied. You can also do alignment. We don't have to worry about pattern. Let's see if I remember how to do this. H-tile. So you can do H-tile and V-tile here. So if we do V-tile of 2, you can do different grid stuff. So if you do corners, you can set it to corners here with an H-tile. And then if you want to do 3 and 3, you can kind of set that up. So there's lots of really cool stuff you can do with NanoMesh to kind of get that look you're going for. And again, it's just assigned to that polygon. So as you move these polygons around, they're just going to follow. They're just instances. So that's really all I'm doing on the character here. If you look at her, and we do show placement on the NanoMesh here, that's just cards. And then I can update these on the fly. So I don't have to worry about, if I want to change these things. Again, it was just as easy as brush, insert. Let's put those as screws. I'm going to grab this little Phillips head screw here, and then I'm going to go to inventory, replace NanoMesh from brush, and now I've got screws in there. It looks like these rotations are off here. So on this particular object, so I'm going to go to 0 rotation, and then do our Y offset as 0, and now we have screws in the place of those other objects there. So when I do show placement, you're going to see now she's got screws instead of the other object. It's way easier to manage that and wrangle that than it is to go through there and replace all those if they were insert mesh brushes or whatever. If someone's opened your file, does he need the insert mesh file too? No, I don't think so. No. Positive. That's stored as a NanoMesh. So let's see brush, insert. Let's go to the model toolkit. Let's do something more obvious so we can change that here. And we'll do this one. I like this one. So again, we'll do new NanoMesh from brush here. And then now we have this new NanoMesh here. So now if I want to modify this with like ZModeler, all I need to do is under the NanoMesh properties, go to Edit Mesh, and hit F to frame, and go into solo mode here. And now I've got a copy of this thing. So it's like, you know what? Let's say we want to do like insert multiple edge loops here. Drag, there we go. And then we'll do Q mesh polygon ball. I'm just going to do something obvious here so we can just pull that in. And then if we want to work in radial symmetry, we can do that too, I think. Transform, let's see, radial symmetry in the Z. Looks like maybe let's try 12. I'm not sure how many spans this thing is. 16, I don't feel like counting them. There we go. So now if we do Q mesh polygon ball, and now I can kind of pull all these things out like so. And then we can do slides. If you do slide edge, you can slide these edges back here. You can slide these edges forward. So you can kind of just start getting that look. So it's like, okay, I like that look even better. So I'm going to go out of Edit Mesh. And now all of these nanomeshes have been updated with that new, let's go out of solo mode here, hit F. Have been updated to the new mesh. They got the little serrated meshes right there. So a lot of different ways to skin the NanoMesh cat if you want to. And if you wanted to also, you know, since again, this is just a plane, you can go in here and do, let's see if I can figure this out. H-tile and V-tile, we'll do 2 and 2. And then you can tell it what pattern you want to do. And it just puts them in corners now. So now if I do show placement off, now we've got 4 little nanomeshes there that are populating all over my character to kind of support like where this thing would be kind of bolted into her. Cool. Yeah, the card set my placement in this case. As far as vector displacement goes, if I take her face here, go into solo mode here, and she has subdivision history here. Let's go ahead and divide her up a bunch here. So we go to brush, chisel, creature. Now what we can do is we can do ears. So we can like, this is all the vector displacement stuff. So it's actually doing undercuts. If you want to do crazier undercuts, let's go through here. And these aren't just alphas, because if we go to brush, chisel, rectangle, these are 2D alphas. So you're going to see there's no 3D in the corner. These are just capturing that 2D information from these brushes and just kind of dragging those out here. But again, it's still pretty useful. You can go in here and do all sorts of crazy stuff if you want to. And let's go ahead and do stroke, lazy step down, and lazy radius down. So you can go small to large to small. You can still get a lot of use out of those 2D alphas. But if you wanted undercuts, that's when you have to go and grab that information from the vector plane. And then we can go to the vector displacement plane. Brush, chisel, 3D. Yeah, so this is the 3D stuff. So you're going to see as I scroll through these, there's a little 3D in the corner. That tells you that it's a vector displacement. And now, again, it's just deforming my mesh under there. And we're also getting undercuts. So if we want to put, you can do that right in our eyeballs here. But again, it is just displacing that plane. So what you would want to do is probably, let's do shift, smooth, stronger. She doesn't have eyeballs. There we go. That's nice and super creepy. Perfect. Can I try to make water? I'm not good at waves, and water I'm probably worse at. I can probably do water droplets using NanoMesh to kind of populate little water droplets. You can take it to Keyshot and render. If I'm going to, I would probably simulate water, honestly. I'd probably go do that in Houdini and then import it in as geometry. I'm not a water sculptor by any means. But I mean, you can make anything into water pretty easily. If I want to take her head and do render, external render, Keyshot. Let's do a beer render. Yes. And Anthony, that's part of the thing too. Is there's a lot of things in ZBrush that I've learned and forgotten, or I've never learned. So yeah, as you go through, I am constantly still picking up. And ZBrush's YouTube page is a great resource for that. I live stream on Tuesdays. There's a lot of really much more talented artists than I am live streaming for them as well. So go to their live stream page and or their YouTube page and go through their playlist, and you'll see my workshop, and you'll also see all of their workshops and their modeling stuff. Paul Gabry and Joseph Drust are a super good resource for just kind of learning the basics of ZBrush. My YouTube page that I keep spamming you guys with has a bunch of ZBrush stuff on it. I try to organize as good as I can, so the playlist page is probably your best bet to kind of dive in there and kind of get oriented. But there's a lot of stuff. It's a very, very, very powerful program, which is a good thing. I would never say like, oh, I wish this program did less. Why would I ever want to say that? But, having said that, sometimes it can be a little overwhelming if you don't know where to start here. So now we've got waterhead. In order to get this to render correctly, I'm going to go to full simulation here so we can get the caustics going. And now you'll see this water bouncing through here. So let's go ahead and let's go back to basic, double tap this water, and let's change our environment here. And let's go ahead and change the environment here. So I want this to be reflected in my water, but I want the color background to be just plain. And yeah, that should work. So now if I want to put a plane down there, let's go ahead and do edit, add geometry. I'm going to do a ground plane, which is just going to act as a shadow catcher. But I'm going to change this ground plane here to like a plastic. And we'll make this let's go back to our materials here, plastic, hard, shiny, red plastic here. There we go. So now we've got water being rendered onto this hard plastic here, and we've got an environment here. So if I go to the environment, I can kind of rotate this environment around, or I can hold down Control and just tap on my screen and drag, and that'll kind of rotate my environment, how it's just lighting this. I can also have multiple light sources. So if I go to Edit, Add Geometry. Now, you may not have access to all of these things with so this is the Keyshot this is the ZBrush to Keyshot Pro. And you'll need the bridge. The bridge is basically what's sending it from ZBrush to Keyshot. So you can go grab that on the Pixelogic website. It's just super easy. It's way easy to just render stuff to Keyshot through ZBrush just with one button push than trying to import a bunch of stuff. And also a lot cheaper. So add geometry. Let's go ahead and add a sphere. And then with the sphere, we'll go ahead and say we're going to move this part here. And I want to really work in pretty small scale here, so I'm going to scale this thing down. So on this thing here, I'll move it over. And on this one, let's do an area light. So now we can have multiple light sources where we have the environment lighting as well as this area light that we created. If we don't want to see this area light, we'll say turn off visible to camera. So now, multiple light sources, and if we go to the environment, turn the brightness down, that'll just be the area light causing the lighting to happen in my scene. So if I go back to lighting here, do full simulation to get the caustics going, now you're going to see as that light passes through the water head and reflecting in the plastic ground plane that we have, and then doing the caustics rendering onto the side here. If we turn our environment back up, brightness of 1, now we'll get more HDR, the high dynamic range image-based lighting, IBL, lighting our scene and causing more shadows and more bounces and all that good stuff. So cool. Yeah, I need to get Keyshot 7. Sometimes I use Keyshot a ton, and then other times I'll just never use it. So I'll probably grab Keyshot 7 when it comes out. But it is 8 o'clock now. I need to make sure I'm not going to get a delivery while I'm here, so I'm going to go ahead and call it a day. Thanks for showing up, everybody. Hopefully it was worthwhile and it answered a good amount of questions. I'm hoping, so Thursday on my channel, I'm going to go through and do the ZBrush stylized rendering. Eventually, I'm going to get her kind of finished up. You guys saw, the making of this. If you go back to the workshop, basically you see the entire making of her entire character here. So we're going to pose her out, throw her into Keyshot, maybe do some even crazier stuff than that. But at the very least, that's what we'll do. So, cool. Very good. And again, if I missed your question in here, just kind of scrolling through, I apologize. Just show up next time and keep asking me questions, and we'll get through it. Thank you very much. And I'll see you guys next Thursday, this Thursday on my channel, and then next Tuesday on this channel.